Hello everyone, my name is Jonathan with Resaleworld Technical Support, and this is a video covering the Liberty Kiosk feature configuration in depth. The first thing we're going to do is click on the Setup menu at the very top of our inventory module, and then we're going to click the Liberty Mobile Admin menu option. Then we'll click on Maintain, and then Kiosk Configurations. I'll sign in. We can now either add a new configuration or we can edit the existing one. We'll do this by just double clicking on the default config here. And we are taken to our feature configuration page. One thing I'd like to point out is that as we cover each individual section here, if you look towards the bottom where the timeline is, everything will be broken apart by chapter. There's also an option at the bottom of the video to view chapters, and you can jump ahead to the specific section that you're interested in viewing. The first feature we're going to start out with here is our custom page feature. Now, this is otherwise known as the static page. So I'm going to click on About Us, as this is a static page. On this page, we have two options that we can edit right off the bat. That's our menu label, and this controls what text appears for our menu in the Liberty Kiosk app. And then finally, our title. This appears above the feature. Next, we have the actual static page selector, which if we don't have any static pages, this will be blank. To add a static page or edit one, we're going to click our Browse button, which is this little square with 3 dots. Then we can either add or edit a static page. We'll click an Add button here to add one, or if we click on a static page that's already been created, we'll be able to edit information off of this static page. So next we can name our static page so we can easily tell what it is in the selector. Then we have our styles input button here, which allows us to input our CSS styles if we know anything about cascading style sheets. So this will control very easily what your HTML code will look like if you know how to edit HTML code. You do not need to know HTML code to do static pages, as we do include a what you see is what you get editor. I'm going to click OK on this. To edit what our static page is actually going to look like, we're going to click the Browse button next to the HTML tag here. So as you can see, if you're familiar with the word processor, you would just simply type out what you want the static page to say, whether it's a Contact Us or an About Us page, and what you see is actually what you will get. You can control the color of the text just like in a word processor app, and also whether you want certain words to be bolded, italicized, or underlined. If you know HTML coding and you've already built something in HTML, you can paste the code into the HTML tab here. Anything that we type into the WYSIWYG editor, or what you see is what you get editor, will actually show up in the HTML tab as HTML code. Again, if you don't know HTML, we can just simply stay under the description and just use the word processor option. So I'm going to click OK on this, and then I'll click OK again. So we can now select what static page we want to use, and then we'll see a preview towards the bottom as to what that static page will look like on the Kiosk app. Next, we have the web feature. The web feature allows us to display a URL that we designate in the Liberty Kiosk app. So this can be a page that's on our website, our landing page, our Shopify site. It'll take our customer directly there. And we have some controls that'll prevent them from navigating to another part of that page, so that way it's always the same page. So we have our standard menu label, which controls what we see in the menu for this option. We have our title, which appears right above the feature that's displayed in the Liberty Kiosk app. Then we have our URL. So we can copy and paste the URL of the page that we want in here, and the Liberty Kiosk app will display that on the screen. Allow navigating determines whether or not the customer can click on links that are on the page, or if the page is simply static and just stays there, not allowing for anybody to go anywhere else other than that page. Form submissions are really useful if you have a Contact Us page and you want to allow people to be able to tap the Submit button and submit those forms, so that way you can get the Contact Us email. The auto refresh interval controls how often in minutes the page will refresh. This is useful if it's a page that dynamically displays information that's being added, for instance, Google Calendar. The next feature we have is account management. With account management, the consignor can sign into the Liberty Kiosk app under this option and can change the information that is in their account in Liberty. They'll only have access to their own account, and you have control over what they can edit and see. So standard options apply. At the very top, you have your menu label as to what you want to call this. You have your title. And then we have our checkmark boxes above each section, which controls whether or not we can see that panel or not. So if I uncheck the contact info box here, then the consignor will not be able to see this information and will not be able to edit it. Even further, we can control what the headings are for each section and whether or not the field is hidden, read-only, or editable. We can also name what each label is for each individual field. Scrolling down under our preferences, we have the ability to get rid of the preferences section altogether. We can also control whether or not we want the consignor to be able to turn off receive email, receive marketing email, and whether they want to donate items. Scrolling down further, we have a contract section which can be disabled. And with the contracts, rather than going through the Liberty inventory module to issue a contract, they can go through the iPad. And this allows them to sign on the iPad, and it will be digitally displayed in the inventory module. Through here, you can also show the date that it was signed. You can view past contracts if you've changed it and they've had to sign multiple contracts. And of course, at the very bottom, whether or not they can sign the contract or not. The next feature we're going to talk about is Consignor Portal. One thing to keep in mind is when the consignor logs into the Liberty Kiosk app with their consignor login account, they'll be given access to both the account management information if you display it, and they'll be given access to their consignor login information on the Liberty Kiosk app. So the controls for this are your standard menu label, which controls what is seen in the menu, your title, which is what you would like to display above the feature. Next, we have the Use Web Configuration option. Turning this option on will allow the Liberty Kiosk app to use the same configurations as the standalone consignor login and the Shopify consignor login web features. The options for these features can also be accessed by editing them on the my.resaleworld.com website. Your Transactions tab controls whether or not consignors can even see any of the transaction features. You can also control what the label says for transactions. Show Transactions controls whether to show individual transactions as opposed to just a summary with totals. Show Non-Payable controls whether to display non-payable transactions as well as transactions that are not yet payable. Show Total Paid controls whether to show total paid to date. Include Store Credit controls whether to include used store credit in the total payable amount. Total Owed controls whether to display a summary of total owed, which includes all non-payable or not yet payable transactions. Show Total Payable controls whether to display a summary for total payable, which excludes all non-payable transactions as well as yet to be paid transactions. And finally, Show Price Sold controls whether to display the price sold on the transactions list. And that's per item that would appear in the transactions list. Scrolling down, we also have our Items tab, which is useful if you have the Consignor Connector feature turned on. We can control what the tab label says for the items. You can also control whether the consignors can see all items, available only, or unavailable only. This drop-down controls right off the bat what they can see. Meanwhile, if you uncheck Allow Item Status, this will turn off their ability to change it from what you set up here. Hide Expired hides available items that are past their expiration date. And finally, Show Item Details allows clicking on the product to view details about that particular item. Next, we have the Purchases option. The Purchases tab shows all the past receipts that they've done as long as you've selected their account in the POS when you're ringing them up. So they can see past receipts and what items made up those past receipts. Next, we have the Payout tab, another feature that's only available with the Consignor Connector option. You can control what the tab label says for the payouts, as well as whether to display it at all. And the only option we have available here is Show Payout Detail. This controls whether customers can view the payout details by clicking on the individual payouts. And that's all there is for Consignor Portal. Next, we have the item lookup feature. This feature allows you to look up items across the entire store. You can control whether the consignor or customer can look up available items only or all items, and that's controlled with this available only checkmark box. Finally, on this feature, we have the max results field here, and this controls the maximum number of results that can appear on screen. Next, we have the new arrivals feature. This feature shows all new inventory that's being inputted into Liberty. And you can control whether you want to show only available inventory or you want to show all inventory regardless of whether it's available or sold. Under the days field, we can control what inventory is applicable to be shown based on the process date. As an example, if you have an item that is within the last 7 days for the process date, then it's going to appear in the list. Whereas if it's over the 7 days, it will not appear as a new item. Finally, we have the price check feature. Here we can type in what the menu label is for this, as well as the title, like the others. And with this, in the Liberty Kiosk app, you can scan an item tag and it'll show you the current price of that item. Very useful if you don't put your markdown schedule on the tag and the customer or consignor needs to find out what the real price is at the current time. This was a video covering the Liberty Kiosk feature configuration in depth.